And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. Smasho here, coming at you from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, just bringing you the most detailed imagery of the sun you'll find anywhere in the world and the most comprehensive space weather as we see all kinds of funky stuff happening on the Earth scale. And a huge group of sunspots rising up here in the northeast. Yes, the northeastern limb features quite a colossal sunspot. It's got a whole string of sunspot groups. It'll probably get a second name there, as that is certainly a more than one sunspot there rising in the northeastern limb of Helios, otherwise known as El Sol. By the way, if you haven't seen the Smash Team site yet, check out the Smash Team site. Here's the full disk view. We'll talk about the Smash Team site here in just a moment. We started out with 171 angstroms. This is 193 plus... son of a... Yes, learning to speak the English language before it's light out. That's the last 24 hours of activity from SDO. By the way, we did see a coronal mass ejection impact a little bit earlier than we expected, but nonetheless. By the way, again, if you enjoy the content, press like, subscribe, share, etc. Support the channel by becoming a member of the Smash Team at smashomash.com/Smash Team. If you click posts, this is the kind of feed that you'll see. Make sure you do that. Keep in mind our GDAX daily reports are only for gold and silver Smash Team level members. There's also a bronze level. We do have email lists that we send out alerts to as well during natural disasters and so on. So sign up for those if you see fit. Let's see what volcanoes have been erupting here in the past 24. Shivaluch continues to erupt in an explosive fashion and produce a 13,000-foot ash plume over the Kamchatkan Peninsula. Suwanosejima in the Ryukyu Islands producing a 6,000-foot ash plume. Semeru, 17,000-foot ash plume. I think that's an uptick over East Java. Flight level 170 over East Java from Semeru. Popocatépetl exploding, flight level 210. It's a 21,000-foot ash plume. Fuego in Guatemala, flight level 140 as it explodes in Guatemala. Sangay in Ecuador exploding, flight level 220 as an effusive explosive eruption of the volcano happens. Continuing lava flows remain in the southeast flank and frequent volcanic eruptions. Sulfur dioxide measurements producing plumes of 999 tons on December 17th. Revenador in Ecuador exploding, flight level 160. Cotopaxi in Ecuador exploding, flight level 240. And Sabancaya exploding in Peru. A great reminder to not pole vault the caldera. Next, looking at seismicity. It's been pretty calm here as far as earthquakes go the past 24 hours. There's a 90-day bar graph to make it real convenient for you, the viewer. And let's see what's going on with seismicity. So as far as earthquakes go, we did have a 5.2 at the Philippines. That happened at 13:33 yesterday afternoon, Universal Time. No quakes above a 5 magnitude range. So some in the 5 magnitude range, no 6 magnitude quakes in the past 24 hours. It's been rather seismically calm. Remember, folks, any earthquake can be a foreshock. There was a 5.0 near the Peru-Ecuador border region. That one was at depth of over 100 kilometers. South Sandwich Islands saw a 5.0. Indonesia saw a 5.1. That was also at depth. Philippines saw a 5.2, and that's where we'll close things out in the geospace and head back to outer space. So there's 171 plus 335 angstroms. Great three-dimensional imagery there of Helios, El Sol, the local yellow dwarf, whatever you'd like to call it. If you've got comments directly for the sun, please leave them in the comments. I'm not sure if the sun watches our videos or not, but let us know in the comments if you think it does. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux is at 155 solar flux units. If you're wondering what a solar flux unit is, it's 10,000 watts of radio flux density. 10,000 joules, rather. 10,000 joules of radio flux density is a solar flux unit. And we're going to see an uptick in the sunspot number here again. So the sunspot number, it looks like it came down to 140. It's going to go back up again because that group in the northeast has lots and lots and lots of sunspots. Next, looking at the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard, which is forecasting a geomagnetic unrest period on the 21st, which is when winter begins for the Northern Hemisphere, by the way. The solstice does occur on December 21st. And watch yesterday's space weather video if you didn't hear about our CME impact forecast. We did see a CME impact just about as forecasted. You can see a little variation still happening here with the magnetic field. A little increase in that. We'll get to it here in a moment. This geomagnetic unrest forecasted by NOAA is a result of a coronal hole high-speed stream. We'll get to coronal holes later. First, the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetosphere, Earth's magnetic moment from space. It's our Geospace Magnetosphere movie. And we are seeing the mop-up time of a minor coronal mass ejection impact. So it came a few hours earlier than we forecasted. We expected it to arrive today at midday. It arrived a little earlier than midday, but it was a pretty close estimation, and I don't remember seeing anybody else forecasting it. So apparently, not only the best space weather, the most comprehensive, the most detailed imagery of the sun you'll see anywhere, but the best forecasting you'll see anywhere. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. Here's the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground, and we are expecting to see a bunch of auroral imagery. We will be sharing it on the Twitter page, twitter.com/SmashOmash. You'll find us all over the internet at SmashOmash. These are the most likely places to see things like aurora, electrical power grid induction, pipeline, rail line induction, etc. The last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground, our ground magnetic perturbations map. As you can see here, we did see a brief period of geomagnetic unrest. There was a strong magnetic field associated with that incoming solar plasma. We got to a KP of 4. Current KP is 3.33. The planetary K-index, a measurement of global geomagnetism, and let's move to the real-time solar wind. So here's the impact of the CME. It is just barely subsiding here. Sort of this whole area here is the CME impact. Right in there. So it actually showed up a little bit earlier than expected there, showing up late in the day. Yesterday on the 18th instead of midday on the 19th, it was a little higher speed than expected, but when it got here, it was more of a density wave as opposed to high-speed plasma. So we did see the solar wind density making it all the way up to about 44 protons per cubic centimeter then. We saw the field get quite strong as it subsided also. So as it subsided, we saw a BT of 16 nanotesla and a BZ of negative 13. So that vertical component there is what drove that geomagnetic unrest period. Now we see things calming down. Current conditions are back to very slow, only 334 kilometers per second for the solar wind speed. Solar wind density, not even 4.5 protons per cubic centimeter. Continuing on to magnetic data, here are your GOES magnetometers. You see a big drop-off there in the GOES magnetometers. By the way, we've got all kinds of weird earthly anomalies to show you later in the video in the bonus features segment. Make sure you stay tuned for that. Some funky things going on with the ionosphere and the electron flux. Next, looking at our top view ecliptic plane field plot, and this sometimes provides some predictive value and sometimes gets a predictive value applied to it. So what we're expecting is a South Pole current sheet to show up somewhere over here sometime soon. At the moment, we've only got a North Pole current sheet, which is what Earth currently lies in. If you bring up the last image there you can see Earth is solidly in a North Pole current sheet. We are expecting a South Pole current sheet to pop up here sometime soon. Maybe by tomorrow's video, we may see a South Pole current sheet returning. Let's move to our line of sight field plot. There is the sun's B field plotted in blue, the solar polar field of north in green and south in red. And let's move to coronal holes, as we've got a couple of well-defined ones. In fact, I think we've got 3 well-defined ones. So there's a South Pole one there around the south solar polar region, and 2 north polar coronal holes there in the northeast ahead of that new massive sunspot. So let's see, this is north, This is north, and this is south pole oriented. So watching that solar polar field reversal process happens is fascinating indeed. A long way to go to get to solar max, as those fields still need to reverse and find themselves at the opposite poles to be anywhere near getting through the solar cycle. So we got a long way to solar max, folks. Until we see an equal amount of coronal holes around the equator, we're nowhere near a solar maximum. Next, we'll move to sunspots. As again, we've got a huge sunspot group there rising in the northeast, which I say is the most likely place to see major flares, but we could see major flares down in the southwest as well, as we've got a series of sunspots setting down there. Also sunspots setting in the northwest. So the likelihood of major flares actually very, very high here, despite a downtick in the overall X-ray background at the moment. Don't be surprised to see an uptick in that. Again, you can see the likelihood of solar flares based on these field orientations and so on is very, very high. And let's take a look at sunspots visually. Here's SDO continuum plus 171 angstroms. What a spectacular series of images there from SDO. And here's a close-up just with the SDO continuum. You can see most of those sunspot groups have remained stable here over the past 24 hours. And let's briefly show the magnetogram. There's SDO's magnetogram. No major changes happening there. Again, likelihood of large flares very high. We're expecting additional M-class flares, maybe even an X-class event. And here's a close-up of this new sunspot group. What do we call that thing anyway? 3169. I think there'll be some new names there. We'll maybe have a 3171 in those trailing groups. But there's the current state of affairs. An impressive string of sunspots there, rising in the northeast. We'll let that play through a second time there for your viewing pleasure. Number 1, I order you to refrain from taking a number 2 in your pants. Engage. Looking at energetic particles, relativistic particles, that is, like the ghost proton flux. And we don't have any. A long time since we've seen a proton event. We are well overdue with the amount of solar activity we've seen recently. By the way, if you haven't seen the description below the video, check it out. We've put new links in there recently in the past, say, month or so. Our latest affiliate/sponsor is Hemp Lucid. So if you're buying their products, please buy them through our link. Support the channel that way. Give Smash staff a raise. Tell your friends and foes about the content. And view the links in our description. Help us out with clicks. Help us out with perhaps last-minute holiday gift purchases. Who knows? There are creams and topicals with CBD, including lip balm. Even CBD for your pets. Again, check the links below the video for some Hemp Lucid savings via our link. Press like, subscribe, share, etc. Leave us a comment. Tell your friends and foes about us. As the deboosting continues on pathetic big tech platforms. You'll also find links to our merch shop below the video. You'll find that on the homepage as well, and welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. Smashomash.com is the homepage. We've got a new top seller. As if you click that link below the video in the description, you will find our merch items in order of best-selling. Of course, I'm actually wearing 2 of them right now. Today's featured product is, and if you're going through hell, keep going. Today's featured product is Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera. So I'm wearing it. Maybe you should too. Don't be like Steve Stimpak. Do not pole vault the caldera. Do make Earth not suck again. As it's up to you. Tell your friends and foes about it. So once again, our top seller is Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera. It's got our homepage as well as the YouTube channel there on the graphic, as well as the great graphic of Steve Stimpak, an artist's rendition there of Steve Stimpak pole vaulting a caldera. And if you're wondering whatever happened to Steve Stimpak, he didn't die in a volcanic pole vaulting accident. He died in a tragic ping pong accident. He was training for ping pong world championships, and he tragically passed away. Poor Steve Stimpak. Don't be like Steve Stimpak. If you're going on a volcanic vacation, leave your vault pole at home. Next, looking at flaring here. So solar flaring is next on the list. We did have a C-class event here as we did show prep. It was like a C4.5. It has since subsided. And let's take a look at the last 24 hours and some wavelengths from SDO. There's 94 angstroms. There's 94. We've added 131 there. 94 plus 131. And here's just 131. And how about a sweet money shot of Sunspot 3169? We'll let it play through twice as we've got plenty of more interesting things to cover here. Again, we've got huge anomalies taking place in the ionosphere. The South Atlantic anomaly has moved. Also, huge issues, huge anomalies in the total electron content forecast. Nighttime GPS errors have been likely occurring around the world. We'll get to it in our bonus features segment. First, a star chart. This is what's going on overhead. We've got a crescent moon up there as it's a dark night, dark night, as Cygnus has recently risen and Mars has recently set. Here's the current state of affairs when it comes to the solar system. We'll advance this 1 week as Earth is moving around to the lonely side of the solar system. The side lacking gas giants. Here's your 1 week forecast. In 1 week, we will have a crescent waxing moon. That'll be the day after Christmas. And let's move to coronagraphs. So here are yesterday's coronagraphs. That's 99 frames. Couple of significant CMEs happening there, coronal mass ejections. Here are today's coronagraphs. 43 additional frames there, and let's take a look at the view from Stereo A at Lagrange 5 and Soho-Lascaux C3 at Lagrange 1. So Soho-Lascaux C3 on the right, Stereo A here on the left. That's located at Lagrange 5. From the perspective of Stereo A, an earthly directed coronal mass ejection would be down that arrow. And of course, from the Soho-Lascaux C3's perspective, it would look like a halo. So we've got an interesting thing here. I don't think it is actually an Earth-directed CME. I think it's off to the southwest. And if you think this is part of that CME, that's actually on the far side of the sun. This little finger sticking out here, that's actually on the opposite side of the sun here. You'll be able to see that on Stereo A. So it does indeed look like the CME that was happening yesterday morning that we covered on yesterday's space weather video before it was completely out of the corona may not be so earthly directed after all. So we don't really see any major halo there. There could be a small component that is earthly directed there. If so, that would arrive on the 22nd. Or maybe even late in the day on the 21st. So in any case, let's just let this play through. And then we'll show you some sweet 24-hour videos. Science. It's one of those things where if you don't look, you definitely won't see stuff. That's why we tell our friends and foes to keep an eye on it. If you don't immerse yourself in the data, you may not find that you're getting results. So here is your last 24 hours from Soho Lasco C2 and C3 and the SDO 304 angstroms wavelength ionized helium. We'll zoom out a little bit more to show those coronal mass ejections in greater detail. There's a little zoom out. No real halo associated with that CME yesterday. I've changed my mind. I don't think it's earthly directed. But the one that we forecasted for today indeed showed up. So again, you can see this little finger coming out here. That's actually on the far side of the sun, not the Earth side of the sun. It can be a little bit deceptive. Sometimes we have to use some deductive reasoning to figure out the direction of coronal mass ejections. Next, we'll look at filaments. And I would say once again to you, the viewer, name that filament by joining us on Twitter. So once again, we're going to tweet right here as we stream the video, as we have dozens and dozens of massive filaments in between Earth and Sun here at the moment. The likelihood of additional coronal mass ejections nearly 100%. We'll be staying on top of it so that you're not on the bottom. So if you don't follow us on Twitter, well, you're invited. As we say, name that filament. If you don't have a Twitter account, get one. If you've decided to unplug from social media, we don't blame you because of the pathetic and putrid behavior of certain organizations, some of which will remain unnamed. I have one thing to say. You can't break the internet, but the internet can break you. Let's look at the GO 16 SUVI for the last couple of hours of solar activity. Let's see where that C-class flare came from, shall we? I believe it was from sunspot 3169, rather. Sunspot 3169, I think, was the producer of that C-class flare. Some instability happening over here as well. So, again, likelihood of large flares. We've got three different major spots here: the southwest, the northwest, and the northeast, all having the possibility of producing large flares. This is the last 24 hours in SDO 171 angstroms. It's the house favorite wavelength. Let us know in the comments what your house favorite wavelength is. As we move to bonus features, which you might find very fascinating. So we've got some surface charging hazards here caused by low energy electrons on the outsides of satellites. That is moving into the Central Pacific Ocean as it leaves western Mexico. So some minor charging hazards there for satellites. Here is the GOES electron flux, which is quite low here. And NOAA forecasting it to go even lower. We would agree, as there is a coronal hole high-speed stream on the way. I would agree with that as well. There is the forecast model, and here you can see, indeed, starting off winter with some very low levels of electron flux. And we're expecting some very chaotic total electron contents as well. There's the one-year graph to put the electron flux into context. That is from solon.info. Here is your ionosphere imagery. The F layer is just one slice of the thermosphere. It's located at about 300 kilometers of altitude. It's above the E layer, which is above the D layer. The upper level of the ionosphere, there is the vibrational frequency. And once again, I'll say it again, the South Atlantic anomaly has moved into the South Pacific. It is now somewhere in front of that arrow, as opposed to where that dot is located, over the continent of South America. How that can be, how it's moved so quickly, I have no idea. I won't get into the generation of Earth's geomagnetic field here at the moment, as this is a daily space weather video, but that is certainly some interesting geophysics, to say the least. Let's bring up the latest image here and switch to the anomalygram. So there's the anomalygram, and this variation here in the ionosphere, right where that arrow is, that looks exactly like this area used to look. So within 2 weeks ago, the South Atlantic anomaly was over South America. Now it is over the South Pacific, having moved maybe 1,200 miles to the west-southwest. Them's the facts. read 'em and weep, or whatever. There's the latest image. That's 11:30 Universal Time vibrational frequency. There is the anomalygram showing anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. The South Atlantic anomaly has left the continent and is now the South Pacific anomaly. Consider it renamed. Next, we'll look at the total electron content, which is, by the way, very chaotic. There are free electrons all over the place. This depicts the free electrons between your GPS satellite and your handset. That is about a 12,500 mile distance. And those free electrons cause signal refraction. You can see even from this image here that there are lots of free electrons totally out of place here. That's the global total electron content map. And here is the animated version of it, courtesy of the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center. Look at the huge GPS errors over the North American continent, over the North Polar region, the South Polar region, huge nighttime electron anomalies. So funky stuff going on in the ionosphere, perhaps the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt, the entire inner Van Allen belt. Lots of free electrons here out of place. It's very disorganized, and we can expect it to be even more disorganized in a couple of days when this next coronal hole high-speed stream arrives. We typically see these very chaotic electron contents associated with low levels of electron flux. These are the facts, and those are huge electron content anomalies. Next, looking at the latest intensitygram and latest solar magnetogram. Let's take a look at some of these groups. Well, that group's got some magnetic complexity. It's certainly beta-gamma class. What about this group down here? Let's see if we can get two in one image. There we go. These are all beta-gamma class as well. In fact, this one down here is beta-gamma delta class. This is beta-gamma. This one is borderline beta-gamma delta class. Don't be surprised to see a large flare from either of these active regions in the west. And this active region here in the northeast is certainly interesting. Look at all of the umbrae. That is a huge string of umbrae there. And that is beta-gamma delta class. So we may see the X-ray flux uptick majorly here. And by the way, if you don't watch the videos on Twitch, you're missing some of the content. Once again, support the Smash team. Support the channel via links. Tell your friends and foes about the content. Press that share button. If you're an influencer, drop us a line. We'll be more than happy to appear in your channel, answer any questions, criticisms, etc. It's all in good fun. Thanks to everybody who's helped us out throughout the years. Thanks to our friends and foes. And congratulations on realizing the channel exists, and welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. As we move to the realm of meteorology, let's pause for station identification. This is the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. What we're looking at here are the 10 hectopascal winds, the upper level winds and the temperatures associated with those areas. It's quite cold up there. It's negative 117 degrees Fahrenheit. This is what's going on around the North Polar region. So we've got these two separate polar vortices happening here. And that's going to cause some cold air to be shifted into the US and so on. Here are the polar jets. Let's get off of temperature and just stick with wind speeds. There are the polar jet streams, and quite a bit of chaos happening there as we've got some meridional jet stream flow indeed. Here are the southern polar jets. A little bit more organized around the southern hemisphere. So let's move to our normally scheduled meteorology segment here. These are the jet streams of the eastern world. These are the surface winds of the eastern world. Surface winds of the western world looking like this. Very strong winds here. Off the coast of Greenland there. Iceland. Yowzers. Those are hurricane force winds there. 69-mile-per-hour winds in between Scotland and Iceland. It is a bad day for Viking raids. Here are the jet streams of the Western world. Got a convergence happening in the Atlantic Ocean there. These are the jet streams of the Central world. And the surface winds are looking like this. A powerful low between the southern tip of Greenland and Ireland is driving those high-speed winds. Remember, folks, that most winds on the planet are actually sucking, not blowing. It may seem like it blows, but usually it's caused by lows, which means it's actually sucking, not blowing. Next, moving to the latest data here from the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite. This is clouds and fog over the Americas in shortwave radiation, 3.9 nanometers infrared, as the croissant-shaped Earth is projected onto a spherical template so that NASA can prove to you that the Earth is spherical, because that's really worth having a conspiracy about, right? Croissant Earth, it's a fact. Next, our weather.gov map, as croissant Earth is projected onto a different type of map. We'll scroll down and show you the key, but if your county's lit, click your county. We've got freeze warnings in Florida. Watch out for your orange juice prices. By the way, we've got winter storm warnings on the mountains of the big island of Hawaii. That's what those pink areas are, similar to those in Maine. Winter storm warnings. And some very cold temperatures there, infusing down from Canada into Montana and the Dakotas. Let's take a look at a temperature forecast here. This is the GFS 72-hour temperature forecast in degrees Fahrenheit. You can see that Arctic blast making its way into the central northern U.S. And let's take a look at temperature anomaly also. Here is the temperature anomaly forecast based on the same GFS model for the same period of time, 72 hours. This anomaly is in degrees Celsius. It's going to be a little bit chilly in most of Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakotas. Also Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Expecting some colossally below normal temperatures there to kick off winter. Next, pressure and precipitation based on the same model. Once again, this is the GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation forecast. Some snow moving down the Rockies there in the next 3 days. And let's continue on to look at snow accumulation. So we're going to show the next 3 days based on the Euro model. This is the next 12 hours of new snow. By the way, windy.com has a great mobile app. Perhaps check that out. And we aren't yet paid to say it. Hey, windy.com, drop us a line. Become our latest affiliate/sponsor. So there's the next 12 hours. There is the next 24 hours. And there are the next 3 days. That is based on the European model. That is new snow. And quite a bit coming there to Washington, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, especially. Also some heavy snows coming to the portion of New York east of Lake Ontario. And let's move on here to check lightning. We've seen some lightning just kicking up here recently in Texas and Louisiana. A bit of a conflagration there. Let's check the real-time lightning map, as there are terrestrial strikes happening, we believe, indeed, around Houston and Austin. I think we have active cells. There we go. There are some strikes northwest of Houston. There's thunder rolling into College Station, Texas. And let's zoom out to show the rest of the real-time lightning map here from lightningmaps.org. Keep in mind, folks, there are not lightning sensors everywhere in the world, so there could be lightning that this is not picking up. The NASA GOES lightning mapper is a little bit more complete. These are ground-based lightning sensors, courtesy of blitzortung.org. Let's continue on here to look at the U.S. Doppler radar map, and you see these bands of weather here moving into Hawaii. Let's briefly take a look at that. There you go. as we've got winter storm warnings on the mountains of the Big Island, Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea. We'll focus on the lower 48 for the remainder of the video. There are the lower 48 states of ALSA, the allegedly United States of America. Here are the clouds and fog. Lots of low clouds over the western Atlantic there. Here is water vapor. We've got some moisture moving from Oklahoma up to the northeast. And some heavy moisture moving in here from the Pacific Northwest. Anyway, here's your recap to close things out. It's your U.S. Doppler radar map based on ground-based radar systems which measure vertical motion of water droplets and snowflakes in the air column. Here is 3.9 nanometer infrared radiation from a satellite showing clouds and fog when it's too dark to use the visible satellite. And here is the water vapor map, which should clear things up if your Doppler is unclear. Thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back. Opinions expressed in this video not necessarily the opinions of Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Facts have been suppressed by Big Tech for your convenience.